Hello, hello, Satnam, everyone. Greetings to you. Happy New Year. Happy January 2023. Here we are. Here we've come. See what adventure it has in store for all of us this time around. I hope you're doing so well. I hope you had a great holiday season, and I'm grateful for you for taking the time to check this out. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a while now, and finally kind of have the bandwidth and have just made the internal commitment to do it. But especially for those of you who I have had the privilege and pleasure of doing a personal reading with, I wanted to continue to offer some content to support you in regards to your relationship with Vedic astrology or Jyotish or yogic astrology, as I like to say. And so every month moving forward, I'm going to be doing two things. I'm going to be doing a video like this that is a sort of snapshot, important update of what's happening with the planets in a given month. So I'll do one of these every month for 2023. And then I'm also going to be doing some features each month of a particular planet. So there'll be one planet per month that I'll kind of shed more information on, in addition to kind of giving a little bit of a forecast and cosmic weather report. So I'll try to keep these as brief as possible. I know time is important. And I'll share my screen here in a second and kind of get into some things that are happening. Before I do, it is important for me always to remember the purpose of Vedic astrology, and that really is to tune us in with the rhythms of nature and with the nature of consciousness itself. So, as I talk about the planets, as I talk about the signs, as I talk about the relationship and kind of the energies that are working, let's always remember that every single one of those energies is an expression of consciousness, and that consciousness, first and foremost, is that which animates us, our physical bodies, our minds, our kind of more subtle energies, as well as that which operates and expresses the physical reality and everything in nature. So again, this whole thing is about having a relationship first and foremost with yourself, secondarily with life, and just exploring and really enjoying the kind of curiosity and the mystery of it all, quite frankly. So with that, let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen here, bring up this PowerPoint presentation that I just put together. And so here we are, January 2023, Vedic Astrology Happenings. So what's going on? All right, beginning of this month, this is today on January 3rd. You can see a snapshot of the sky. This is the positioning in terms of where all the planets are right now, as of just about 30 minutes ago on January 3rd. So the sun currently in the sky in regards to the sidereal zodiac, which is the fixed positioning of the stars, the zodiac that the Eastern system of Jyotish uses rather than the Western system. The sun is currently in the sign of Sagittarius. The moon currently is conjunct, meaning connected with Mars in the constellation of Taurus. I'm gonna just comment on this for a little bit. I was talking to a few people today, actually, and maybe even yesterday. You might have felt it. This combination of Mars with the moon is very intense. The moon right now is in a very strong position. Taurus is one of its strongest positions in the zodiac. It's almost full. It's going to be full in the next few days. And the moon has everything to do with our feelings and with our emotions and with our mind. And Mars is sort of an aggressive energy, and it's an intense energy. Anytime the moon and Mars are together, that can be kind of it can bring up a lot. And Mars is retrograde right now, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. But this combination of a retrograde Mars with an almost full moon in a strong position in Taurus can bring up a lot. So just be aware of that. If maybe you started feeling it yesterday, today, you may have an excess of energy or kind of some swings of emotion. Sexuality and sensuality is very heightened in this kind of a combination, quite frankly, as well. So there may be some of that that's coming up. Sleep, dreams, all of that is sort of par for the course, especially in the next, day or so. Even it'll sort of conclude. We've got a retrograde Mercury right now in Sagittarius. We've got a retrograde Mars, as I mentioned, in Taurus. Jupiter is in its own constellation of Pisces, where it's been for a while now. And Saturn is also in its own house of Capricorn. So we'll come back to these in a little bit, but I just want to kind of give you the current snapshot. So a big thing that's going to be happening is on January 6th, on Friday, January 6th, there's going to be a full moon that's going to be taking place in the constellation of Gemini. Full moon in Gemini. It's kind of an interesting full moon because Mercury is currently in Sagittarius with the sun, and Mercury is retrograde right now. And Mercury rules Gemini. And so the fact that the full moon is happening in a constellation that's ruled by Mercury, and that Mercury is retrograde and in a very strong relationship with the moon is interesting. And this can lead, kind of like I was speaking to not too long ago, to kind of an excess of mental energy. A lot of times Gemini is an air sign. It's very sort of mind oriented. And with Mercury's involvement in this full moon being retrograde, it can bring up things around anxiety, potentially, again, insomnia, restlessness, potentially communication, since Mercury and also Gemini is very much connected to communication, commerce, technology. So just be aware of that. That's sort of an important combination in this full moon on the 6th is this mercurial kind of energy, especially being, retrograde. And Mercury is in Sagittarius, which is a mutable sign, just like Gemini. So there's a lot of mutability, there's a lot of changeability. Yeah, and Jupiter is kind of involved a little bit in this full moon based on its current positioning, and Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So, yeah, there's a lot of this changeable sort of energy that's in a foot, especially leading up to and kind of peaking on the 6th and a little bit on the 7th. And then moving ahead just a little bit on the 12th and the 14th. So this will be kind of a nice change to a certain degree. Mars, as I mentioned earlier, has been retrograde for a while now. It started retrograding back on October 30th. So it's been almost a month and a half in retrograde. And it'll finally go back to being direct on the 12th, which I'm very grateful for. I think this Mars retrograde brought up a lot for a lot of people, over the holidays. And, it's in the constellation of Taurus, which can be stubborn. It can be a little bit stubborn, would just be a good word. And so with this retrograde Mars energy, yeah, that was, I think, heightened for a lot of people in terms of conflict, communication, things of that nature. It'll be in Taurus still, till March. So it'll be direct though, which is nicer than its retrograde nature. And then the sun is going to be moving out of Sagittarius on the 14th. It'll be moving into Capricorn. And the sun has kind of been under the effect of this retrograde Mars the whole time it's been in Sagittarius. And so I think, it'll be nice also having the sun out of Sagittarius and into Capricorn, because it's going to take away a little bit of that Mars kind of aggression that it's been under the effect of. And again, with Mercury being in there, I think there's been a lot of, communications around boundaries, um, around feelings, around kind of independence and autonomy. Those seem to have been kind of heightened over the last, month and a half, in particular, with all of these combinations of the Sun and Mercury and Mars and the different retrograde effects that have been in the works. So the Sun will move into Capricorn. And I do think, if you are to put one date on your calendar, which just might be a date to be aware again of some other like emotional energetics, would be January 16th and the 17th. I think the moon is going to be moving towards a new moon. We're going to be having a new moon in Capricorn in a little bit later in January here. And the moon in this position, specifically on the 16th, but also on the 17th, is what they call debilitated in Scorpio, which is very unsettled. And Mars is having a very strong effect on it. And so, and is Saturn. And so that's kind of a double whammy, triple whammy, really, for the moon. It's weak, it's debilitated, it's getting aspected by two of the most malefic forces, Mars and Saturn. Doesn't have any really positive support to it. And it's waning, moving into a new moon. So just be gentle on yourself, on these days. It's really a period for nourishment, for self-care, for tenderness, for compassion, just for being really gentle. And so, yeah, just, being aware of those energies is a nice way to be, again, your emotional nature of the moon is just being tender to that part of yourself. Mercury will move out of being direct, or move out of being retrograde, also on the 17th, which is kind of nice. So Mercury will be back to direct. There won't be any retrograde planets. And so that's I think a nice thing as well for the rest of the month. And then the last thing, and this is really the biggest update to me of January, and this is huge. So hopefully you've stuck around long enough to watch this. I probably should have let off with this, but I guess I gotta save the best for the last for those who are willing to do the work, and that's what this planet is all about. We're going to talk about Saturn for a second here. So Saturn is the planet that is connected to karma in particular. It shows us our karma. It's the Lord of karma. It's a difficult, very difficult planet. And for the last more or less 3 years, Saturn has been moving its way through the constellation of Capricorn. This started back in January 24th of 2020 was when Saturn moved into Capricorn. And we all know what's been going on the last 3 years. It's been a hell of a ride, especially those 2.5 years, really through the height and kind of, early part of 2020 with COVID, and then moving through 2021 and into 2022. And so Saturn's been in this 2.5 year transit moving through Capricorn, where it's very strong and it's taught us a lot, kind of about ourselves. And it's been hard. It's been hard work. Capricorn is an earth sign. It's a hard work kind of a sign. And Saturn started to move into Aquarius back in April of 2022. At the end of April, it started to move into Aquarius, which was a really nice thing. Thank God it's finally out of Capricorn. But then it went retrograde in June of 2022. It moved back into Capricorn for quite a while. And then finally now, as of January 17th, 2023, Saturn is done with Capricorn. It's no longer going to be in there. So, even in April of 2020, that was kind of the beginning of this transition of Saturn out of Capricorn. But from, kind of May until now, there's been sort of this retrograde experience and kind of final part of this Saturn kind of beatdown, as I like to say, which is really frankly what it's been for a lot of people. But it's also been incredible time of transformation and removing things in our lives that don't serve us, because that's what Saturn does. It usually does it through pain, because we don't want to let go because our ego is attached and clinging to things, but Saturn knows better, and so it removes those things that don't serve us, but it's often very painful. It's sort of a cathartic kind of metamorphosis process that a lot of times involves a death of some kind for a part of our life or a part of ourself that is no longer necessary. So I'm pumped, man. Personally, I'm pumped for this Saturn transit into Aquarius, where it's going to be for the next about 2.5 years. And Saturn is very strong in Aquarius. It's even stronger than in Capricorn. So Saturn is a tough teacher, but it's really for us as yogis who are attempting to grow in our life and expand our consciousness. It's a wonderful opportunity. And Aquarius is an air sign. So, it's not an earth sign anymore. It's an air kind of energy, and it's more mystical in nature. Capricorn is very practical, very entrepreneurial, very hardworking, even fiery, even though it's an earth sign. Aquarius is all air, baby, and even a little bit of space. It's that more expanded consciousness, very connected to, humanitarian endeavors, the divine as well. And so, man, we've got this Saturn energy kind of moving us in this new direction, which kind of required the former work of Capricorn to plant the roots, to establish a foundation. And now we kind of get to start rising again. We'll talk more about Saturn later. I don't want to get too into it, but it's a big transit on the 17th. So that's a very exciting opportunity, I think, for all of us to be embracing really a new chapter, a new chapter. And then kind of lastly, just to close, there's going to be a new moon on the 20th and the 21st in Capricorn. Venus is in there as well, which is kind of nice to bring in a little bit of loving, sort of balancing energy to the otherwise more kind of detached and kind of cold energy of Capricorn. So yeah, this is a lot, again, in January, and it's a new year. It's a new time. And I think, again, this Saturn transit to me is really the biggest thing to be aware of, but also the full moon and, these retrograde energies. It's really a time for continued practices of your spiritual sadhana, journaling, introspection, taking time alone, self-care. These are always things we should be doing, but especially right now during this month in particular. But great time for meditative practices, um, and just anchoring yourself into that which is changeless, which is consciousness. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have questions, if you want to chat more, always available. All of these things affect people very differently based on your personal chart, based on your rising sign, based on your natal chart. But these are just the energies that are kind of up generally, and then each of us individually will be affected in different ways, based on our charts. So thank you for taking the time, and I commend you for, just again being in relationship with these forces of consciousness and enjoying the alchemy of life that we get to have a relationship with. Satnam.